The bartender asked a man sitting at the bar, "What'll you have?" The man answered, "A scotch, please." The bartender handed him the drink and said, "That'll be $5. The man said, "What do you mean? I don't owe you anything for this." A lawyer sitting nearby overheard the conversation. He said to the bartender, "The customer's got a point. In the original offer, which constitutes a binding contract upon acceptance, there was no stipulation of remuneration." The bartender was predictably unhappy, but said to the man, "Okay, I'll let you off this time, but don't ever let me catch you in here again." The next day, the same man walked into the bar. The bartender said, "What the heck are you doing in here? I thought I told you to keep away from this place. I can't believe you've got the nerve to come back." The man said innocently, "What are you talking about? I've never been in this bar in my life." Fearing that he had made a mistake, the bartender backed down. "I'm very sorry," he said, "but the likeness is uncanny. You must have a double." "That's very kind of you," said the man. "Make it a scotch." On the outskirts of a small town, there was a big old pecan tree just inside the cemetery fence. One day, two boys filled up a bucket full of nuts and sat down by the tree out of sight. They began dividing the nuts, saying, "One for you, one for me, one for you, one for me," as they went along. Several nuts dropped and rolled down toward the fence. Another boy came riding along the road on his bicycle. As he passed, he thought he heard voices from inside the cemetery. He slowed down to investigate. Sure enough, he heard, "One for you, one for me, one for you, one for me." He just knew what it was. He jumped back on his bike and rode off. Just around the bend, he met an old man with a cane hobbling along. "Come here quick," said the boy. "You won't believe what I heard. The devil and the Lord are down at the cemetery dividing up the souls." The man said, "Beat it, kid. Can't you see it's hard for me to walk?" But when the boy insisted, the man hobbled slowly to the cemetery. Standing by the fence, they heard, "One for you, one for me, one for you, one for me." The old man whispered, "Boy, you've been telling me the truth. Let's see if we can see the Lord." Shaking with fear, they peered through the fence, yet were still unable to see anything. The old man and the boy gripped the wrought iron bars of the fence tighter and tighter as they tried to get a glimpse of the Lord. At last they heard, "One for you, one for me. That's all. Now let's go get those nuts by the fence, and we'll be done." The old man ran so fast he beat the boy to the gate. The rain was pouring down outside Mr. O'Connor's Irish pub. There, standing in front of a big puddle outside the pub, was an old Irishman, drenched, holding a stick, with a piece of string dangling in the water. A passerby stopped and asked him, "What are you doing?" "Fishing," replied the old man. Feeling sorry for the old man, the gent says, "Come in out of the rain, and I'll buy you a drink." In the warm ambience of the pub, as they sipped their whiskies, the gentleman, being a bit of a superior smartass, cannot resist asking, "So how many have you caught today?" The old man sipped his whiskey and said, "You're the eighth." An elderly couple, a priest and a doctor, walk into a bar. As they are sitting down and drinking, they eventually start talking about conception and the question of, when does life begin? The priest said in the Bible states that life begins at conception. Jeremiah 1:5. "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." This is God's word, so it is true. The doctor looked at the priest funny and said, "You cannot be serious. I have been in practice for years, and life begins at birth when you breathe your first breath of air." The priest and doctor continued to argue their point, and as others began to shift their attention to their conversation, the old man spoke. "You are both wrong. My wife and I fully agree that life begins when your kids finally move out of the house." There was an Irishman, a Mexican, and a blonde guy, who were construction workers working on top of a building. It was lunchtime, and the Irishman opened his lunch pail, finding cabbage and beef. "If I get one more beef and cabbage for lunch, I'm going to jump off of this building," he says. Then the Mexican opens his lunch pail and finds a taco. "If I get one more taco for lunch, I'm going to jump off this building," he says. The blonde man opens his lunch pail and finds a peanut butter sandwich. "If I get one more peanut butter sandwich, I'm going to jump off of this building." The next day, the Irishman opened his lunch pail and found cabbage and beef, so he jumped off the building to his death. Next, the Mexican opened his lunch pail, and upon finding a taco, he jumped off as well. Finally, the blonde guy opened his lunch pail and found a peanut butter sandwich. He, too, jumped off the building. The next day at their funeral, the Irishman's wife said, "If only I knew that he didn't like cabbage and beef, I would surely have packed him something else." The Mexican's wife said, "If only I knew he didn't like tacos, I would have packed something else." Finally, the blonde man's wife spoke up. "I don't know what his problem was. He packed his own lunch." Joe was a very sly golfer who wanted a certain type of caddy to help him play a golf round with friends. He went over to the caddy shack and asked a small group of caddies, "Which one of you can count and keep a good score?" A caddy raised his hand and said, "You should pick me, mister. I am an A student in school. What's 5 plus 6 plus 5 total?" "14, mister," said the caddy. "Excellent, you'll do fine." A millionaire and his wife lead a lavish lifestyle. Until, one day, the guy lost everything in a shady investment deal. That night, he went home and explained their diminished financial status to his wife. "Since we need to start saving, you better learn to cook so that we can let go of our personal chef." "That's fine," she said. "If you can learn how to fuck, we can fire the gardener too." A man and his wife check into a hotel. The husband wants to have a drink at the bar, but his wife is extremely tired, so she decides to go on up to their room to rest. She lies down on the bed when, suddenly, an elevated train passes by very close to the window and shakes the room so hard she's thrown out of the bed. Thinking this must be a freak occurrence, she lies down once more. Again, a train shakes the room so violently she's pitched to the floor. Exasperated, she calls the front desk and asks for the manager. The manager says he'll be right up. The manager is skeptical, but the wife insists the story is true. "Look, lie here on the bed and you'll be thrown right to the floor," she tells him. So he lies down next to the wife. Just then the husband walks in. "What?" he says. "What are you doing here?" The manager calmly replies, "Would you believe I'm waiting for a train?"